Okay, thanks. Hey everyone, welcome to ACDC number 168. This is issue 1772 in the PM repo. And yeah, should have a pretty exciting call today. We'll review what's happened on the Fusaka side of things, with an eye towards officially confirming our mainnet dates. And then we can transition into Amsterdam and discuss a number of EIPs there to continue scoping that fork. So let's go ahead and get into it. First up, I believe, some major events since our last call would have been Sepolia going to BPO2 and then Fusaka happening on Hoodie. I see Paris here. Maybe he could give us some updates on what he's seen. Also
Yeah.
Barnabas. Yeah, okay, thanks.
So for Sepolia BPO2, it went smoothly. We haven't necessarily seen any issues. Also, we are looking at all of our data being collected, and there's a huge bias towards supernodes on Sepolia, which makes sense considering every validator is probably a supernode and everyone providing RPC is a supernode. The hoodie data is a bit more interesting. We do have a better distribution of custody columns on Hoodie. The fork on Hoodie itself also went perfectly fine. There was a small drop in participation, most of it attributed to operator issues. However, there was this one red bug that was found, and I'll let the red team expand on that a bit later. But in the meantime, they've already patched the release there.
Okay, great. And I guess, yeah, zooming into the rest bug a minute. It sounds like it was a combination of some edge cases. I guess it'd be good to also, yeah, at least explore if we could have a static test for this. I'm not sure if it's really something that's well addressed by that format of test.
So we had tested this scenario in the past, but the outcome is basically an orphan block, and I guess we didn't necessarily missed this in that scenario. So we're talking to the testing team, and I think we will have a explicit test for this. There were just some details that they were figuring out, and I see PK's on the call. He was the one who figured out the sequence of events. So maybe you want to speak, PK?
Nothing really to add there. Yeah,
Okay, that works then. Cool. Okay, well, nice find. And yeah, it seems like they already have it patched, so that's good. Um, okay. Otherwise, yeah, it looks like things have been going pretty well. Um, Anything else on the forks or more generally on Fusaka? If not, I think we can go ahead and discuss mainnet dates. So, excuse me. So yeah, on the last ACDC, I wanted to start this ball rolling just so that yeah, we could basically move ahead today. Because the proposal would be following this original doc from Barnabas that here I'll grab this link, but ultimately would say mainnet releases out November 3rd, which is I believe Monday, and then we'd have the fork 1 month from then, so that would be December 3rd for Fusaka on mainnet. Along with that, there's dates for the BPO1 on mainnet. That would be on December 9th. And BPO2, that would be January 7th of next year. So again, last ACDC, people were generally on board. Didn't seem like there would be any issues with that. We checked again on ACDE last week. People are okay with that. Following the process doc that we have, we really, if we're following the letter of it, we should wait until today to actually officially set the dates. So I'd suggest we do that now. And yeah, again, I think everyone is on board at this point. So any reason not to do it? Otherwise, we'll lock that in and kick off everything we need to do there. Manu?
Yeah, hey. So during the who did fork, so some user reported some bugs we, for some reason, didn't see on Holesky or Sepolia or testnets or devnets. We are, some of them are fixed or are going to be fixed, and for at least one bug, we don't have the root cause yet. For example, this bug is after a few hours, Prism nodes tends to kick out non-Prism peers, and so after a few hours, Prism has only Prism peers. We don't have a fix yet, and for that reason, it's really likely we cannot release on next Monday.
Okay. Hmm. Okay. Maybe we'll circle back to that. Is everyone else okay with these dates?
I'm not saying we should delay the mainnet, huh? But I'm just saying that it's unlikely we release on Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, which is maybe okay. Like, especially if we get something, at some point next week. I think that still is enough time for people. Um, okay. Would you be okay then if we went ahead with these dates that we have as is? And yeah, I mean, worst case then, like something would become a deeper issue than we expect, and then we would need to adjust, which we could do. There just might be some thrash with everyone else trying to get ready.
And so yeah, iPhone is asking if I can say why it is only surfacing now. I cannot at the moment. We didn't see this issue on DevNet or Sepolia and Holesky. We are still investigating.
Yeah, it sounds like it only really became apparent on Hoodie, um, which is, interesting. I think Hoodie has a much more realistic node distribution than the other test nets. So, okay. I think if you're okay with it, that's what I would say is just go ahead and move ahead with this. And yeah, we'll just keep an eye on it. If we need to adjust, then we can adjust.
Yeah, I agree with Justin about keeping mainnet dates and delay release from Prism.
Okay, cool. Okay, then in that case, let's see. I think let's see, Nimbus. I'm not sure if anyone from Nimbus is here. Or Grandine, if they're around. Okay. Well, as far as I know, they wouldn't have any issues with this. So let's go ahead and do that. And yeah, Prism team, we'll just wait for your release as soon as we can get it. Otherwise, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. There's a number of other places, the Meta EIP, there's this process stock for Fusaka that will have all this information. And yeah, one more note on that. We set up the structure with Pectra and just wanting a little more clarity around, if there is an incident, how would you respond to it? So I will be reaching out to everyone to essentially get a point person per team. So that will go in the PR, and then we should be good there. And otherwise, yeah, I think we're good to go. So again, I know everyone, this was a big lift to get this together by this point in time. So thank you for that. Um, this is a really cool fork. The people I've talked to in the community are very excited about it. And yeah, it's a really big deal. So super exciting. And yeah, let's just then focus this next month on getting a safe upgrade to mainnet. Cool. Okay, thanks everyone for the updates there. I did want to circle back to this one last thing for Fusaka. Barnabas had a suggestion to this process doc I was just referring to. And essentially, okay, so the language we have today is that mainnet should not have an upgrade date set until all testnets have been upgraded. That's what we've been doing. He essentially proposes to change the language such that we only need at least one testnet. And there's some discussion on the PR if you want to check this out. I think the feedback is a bit mixed, and I kind of tend to agree. Like, I hear what Barnabas is trying to do just to give us some more flexibility around setting the date versus having to go through all of these test nets. Um, Again, of course, I think the ambient context here to keep in mind is like obviously if there's an issue, we like would not just blindly move ahead with mainnet. Um, yeah. So in any case, I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else about this at the moment. Uh, but also, yeah, I'm not sure we want to merge this as is. Ben?
Isn't the more important thing not the waiting for the test net to set a date, but the distance from the test net going live to when the main net date is, if you see what I mean. That that period between the two rather than when we decide on the date.
Mm, perhaps. So, I mean, the thing we definitely want is 1 month between the date and mainnet. And I believe the intent here is just to have the ability to, essentially all agree on what the date would be, even if the testnets haven't forked. That way we can move things forward, kind of like we were trying to do this time, where, especially given the timing here, where like presumably we'd have releases out on Monday or again sometime next week. I wouldn't want to come and propose this, for example, on this call, being like, "Hey, everyone, by the way, like get a release out in a few days over the weekend." So that's where we're trying to find the balance of the language here, just to give us the flexibility to avoid, very short turnarounds. Um, but yeah, so I think in that case, we'll just let this simmer a bit more. If I find a minute, maybe I'll try to think of some, yeah, better language that captures more precisely what we want. Okay. Anything else on Fusaka for the moment? Okay. Then, Glamsterdam. This should be exciting. We can talk about scoping. And, one reason it will be exciting is there are a large number of EIPs. Actually, let me just try to grab the Meta EIP link if people want to follow along that way. So there are a large number of PFI'd EIPs. And the good news for today is most of them are entirely on the EL side, which makes our job a little bit easier on the CL side. And I tried to keep track, like keep up with everything. We had the deadline today, so there were a lot of things. I think there's even a few more that are still in PRs, which, just to be clear, I think that's fine. We can get those merged, today, tomorrow, and I think those can still be in bounds. There's, yeah, a few things we need to do on the EIP editing side just to actually get them in. But in any case, yeah, so there's a number here of EIPs on the agenda that we can cover today. And yeah, I think we're pretty much ready to get into it. I guess one more comment here is in terms of process, I think today, we can just maybe touch on each one. And if people are here and want to say a few words, that's great. If there's like other considerations we want to get into, we can start that process. I, given the timings here and the deadline being today, I'm not expecting people to, like we don't even necessarily have the full set until now. So we can't really make decisions today. And then what I would propose is each client team, again, have a written proposal, kind of like we've done in the past, with their view of what should go in on the CL side, and have that by the next ACDC. So that would be 2 weeks from today. That's 13th November. And that should be hopefully a nice way to move forward. Yeah, I'm expecting, well, at least I'm hoping there's pretty default rough consensus just once everyone takes a look and we move forward. So I guess one question then for everyone here, does that sound okay timing wise? Having something together in the next 2 weeks, and then we can take that input on the next ACDC and move forward there. And yeah, I'm hoping it should be a pretty smooth process on the CL side. Okay, yeah, I got a few thumbs up here as we went. So okay, so let's do that. And then let's get into it. So I'm just checking to make sure there aren't other comments here. I think I got them all. So yeah, I went down the list yesterday and just tried to pull out the CL ones. Also, yeah, if there's one I missed, please call it out. That was just an omission on my part because again, there's a very long list to go through. But I tried to pull out the things that have any CL bearing. So either are entirely in the CL layer, which I think they bifurcate pretty well. Maybe fossil is the one cross layer thing that we still have to discuss. But yeah, so let's go. The first one would be 7688. This should be the SSZ EAP that introduces stable containers. We'd had Purith as like this bigger bundle of features for like clients and different things in that domain that I believe was proposed as the headliner, but was not selected. Eton came back and picked out a smaller subset to propose as a PFI EIP. So we have this one. I don't know if Eton's on the call or if anyone wants to speak to 7688, but this would be a good chance to do so. Okay. Okay, and yeah, Justin's just calling out here. There is a specs PR on the CL side, PR 4630. Link here in the chat if you want to take a look. So yeah, I think that's probably it for that today. But keep it in mind, this should be something that we reason about for the scoping over the next 2 weeks. Okay. Next up, 8045. So this EIP essentially changes the way the proposer shuffling works so that we exclude slashed validators. Today, if you look at the specs, when you go to derive the proposer shuffling at a given point in time, it selects from the entire set of validators, and that could include slash validators. At the same time, we have a rule that slash validators cannot propose, and so this basically is a de facto miss slot. And I think usually this isn't really an issue because there just aren't that many slash validators, especially on mainnet at a given point in time. This did, I believe, become more apparent on Hashki, for example, because there were many more slash validators there. And then what happens is, the chain quality or like liveness kind of degrades, which is not nice. So 8045 just has a small change to how the provision shuffling works to exclude slash validators. Pretty straightforward. I actually forget who, Barnabas, were you actually the author on this one? I feel like I remember that.
I'm a co-author.
Okay. Well, do you or another co-author want to say anything? Oh, Francesco as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple EIP. I think you said pretty much everything. Yeah, the motivation came from Barnabas, which I think you pretty much already covered. And yeah, I think basically it's just something that used to work this way because we didn't have proposer look ahead and it would have caused problem to exclude slash validators. Now it doesn't. It's not a huge deal. Like it's it's clearly not the most important EIP, but it's also extremely simple. So maybe we might as well do it.
Okay, thanks. So take a look at that one. Again, this is famous last words, but I think it's essentially literally a one-line change. So pretty straightforward. Okay. Next up, we have 8061. This is an EIP that's a little more involved than the last one, but not too much more. And it proposes to increase the churn limits. So yeah, this one we'll probably want to sit and think about a bit. So these churn limits have to do with entries and exits to the validator set. I think it also touches consolidations, right, Francesco?
Yeah, there's like kind of two separate churn limits for consolidations and for the rest.
Okay, and so all of them would be increased with the CIP.
Yes. I mean, these are
Okay,
just, well, the numbers in the IP are, well, or like the IP is proposing to increase all of them. In principle, we could increase only the exits and entries or only the consolidations or anyway do
okay,
something, yeah, a combination of these things. But
I
like
see.
I would
Okay,
propose to increase all of them because I think there's reasons why we care about pretty much all of these numbers. And
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so it increases all these churn limits. And, for anyone listening who might not be that familiar, what this would mean practically is, yeah, it's faster for you to get into the set, to exit the set, also to consolidate, which sounds good. I think that's a pretty strict UX win in a vacuum. Of course, there are always trade-offs. And what do we lose? Well, this would eat into weak subjectivity that we have today. So again, I think this is a pretty straightforward change in terms of the specs, but there are implications here for, yeah, essentially the security here with this fixed subjectivity parameter. So something to take a look at again over the 2 weeks and think a bit about. Um, Actually, Francesco, do you have a sense? I think from what I remember, um, was it having the we like basically would it like double churn and then half fixed subjectivity, or is it a little more
So
complicated than
yeah,
that?
it's slightly more complicated just because there's these two churns and with the numbers I put, which again are like preliminary, they're basically just some numbers that make the week subjectivity period to be around a week. And yeah, with these numbers you get something that's around a week. And the actual increase is like in the churns is 4x for exits and activations and 2x for consolidations. So it basically goes from like around 15 days to around a week, or like to be precise, 6 days, which to me seems still seem like quite reasonable. But yeah, of course we can like I don't know if we find like a number for the week subjectivity period that people think makes sense, then we can sort of work back from there and figure out what the numbers can be from this perspective in terms of the churns. And then yeah, of course, there's these other considerations that people are mentioning in the chat. But like purely from like a weak subjectivity perspective, it's really easy to just work back from whatever period we're comfortable with to which churns we should have.
Okay, yeah, and maybe just to refresh everyone, weak subjectivity weak subjectivity. Number one is a mouthful to say. Number two, the way to think about this is how often do I need to come online as a node? And, I think a heuristic we'd probably all agree to is that, if you are running a node, it's pretty much always online. If you're not online, that's when this would come into play. And, let's say we go with the EIP, like Francesco was saying, the period comes down to like 6 days. That would mean that if I'm offline as a node for more than 6 days, I would need some piece of external information to know what, quote, the correct chain is, right? An interesting thing here is, we've had this notion from the very beginning of the beacon chain, and something we've kind of had more of since is this notion of checkpoint sync. So, point being, there is like, I think, much better infrastructure for getting this information to know what the correct chain is. And yeah, generally, I think it's, yeah, more, at least to me, I feel more comfortable shortening this period. Again, I don't have a view on the exact number, but I think we can do this again, given the benefits, which again would be much better staking UX, which is something that comes up quite a bit. So there is a little side discussion here. Ansgar brings this up. Okay, essentially touching issuance. I don't know, Ansgar, do you want to give a comment to this, just so people have it on their radars as they're considering the CIP?
Yeah, I mean, just we've in the last 2 years had several conversations around the future of issuance on Ethereum. I think the situation is that many people have this belief that the current issuance curve will at some point need adjustments, but at the same time, also part of this experience was to say, hey, actually, there's many stakeholders around staking, so we really have to be careful with this conversation and with changes, and basically like have anything that would ever touch issuance be very like have a lot of like look ahead time, where we would basically like introduce changes with very long kind of lead times, longer than normal for changes. And as part of that, also there was this adjustment of the churn limit, or basically like this kind of this cap that that was introduced, and part of the motivation was to say, okay, we just have a bound now on how quickly the situation around issuance can change, right? So the issuance obviously is a function of how much ETH is staked in total. So the basically like for exits, it's in a way it really doesn't matter so much, because yeah, that just gets us back to kind of the issuance situation that we had in the past. Entries basically is the potential thing that can really start changing the situation quite a bit. And so yeah, one implication of the CIP that I personally would not like is that it basically, I would say it is almost in itself an issuance change, because or like at least it's changing the system that is kind of generally connected to issuance. And so I personally would already say that should follow the rule of no kind of last minute changes or like no kind of like short term changes. But also more concretely, it basically would mean that if there was a shift in environment where basically you can imagine like many new entities that all want to stake, that between us seeing that the entry queue would be completely backed up, and us being able to like to make any changes to issuance to react to that, there would no longer be enough time, right? So basically it would mean that between the start of that backlog and the time that we could see 70-80% staked, that there wouldn't even be necessarily a hard fork anymore, because it could go so quick. So I personally would probably consider at least having this EIP modified to not touch the entry speed, and only modify the others.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll just add a comment here. Personal take. I feel like if we were to look at the queue and see, oh, it's suddenly too big, and then try to change issuance in response, that would be also a thorny thing to do. Because one, we'd have to like roll out a change pretty quickly. I think, much faster than our historic hard fork cadence. And also it's just like, you can ask the question, at what point does that change, the guarantees people thought they had when they entered versus when they actually activate.
But this is specific guidance that we have. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but like,
no,
for example, with stakeholders like Lido, we've talked a lot in the past, because again, they obviously like, just like an example of also others, like just mentioning them because they're the biggest maybe, example of people that have to make forward-looking decisions based on kind of Ethereum issuance. And one thing we've always been saying is basically like, hey, look, normally under normal conditions, kind of like an issuance change would probably be something we like, obviously would be up for the community anyway, but like from our side, we would recommend from the time something like this is again introduced into the discussion, we would probably want to like have a year and a half, 2 years at least between it being first proposed and it going live. The one circumstance in which that could have to be a bit faster would be specifically if there's a big backlog of the entry queue. And so basically that's always the one thing that we point to at like, it's like the one kind of circumstance under which Ethereum might have to act faster, but at least might have to act faster still within reasonable speed. Like even today, like it is actually quite slow for new inflow. And I think again that would just change now with this EIP. That would make me, if we were to accept it as is, that would make me, for example,
probably start working on a concrete issue and change proposal for HStar, because I think otherwise it would no longer be responsible to have too much of a kind of time where the chain is that vulnerable to large changes in stake percentage. So just wanted to flag it again. Like I think it would also not be the end of the world, but I think it would meaningfully change the dynamics around issuance.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good call out. And yeah, maybe just to like play that back a bit. So to be clear, this does not change the issuance curve. Like, it does touch on the mechanics around issuance, like Ansgar was just pointing out. This is not something like in the past, even in proof of work Ethereum, where we like quote change the issuance. This does not do that. It does change mechanics around how quickly things can change within the current system. And then there are these second or even third order effects, like Ansgar was just saying. So point being is, for people today, as you go to look at the CIP again over the next couple of weeks, it might look like a pretty simple change, but there are definitely, again, second order effects to keep in mind. Okay, I think that's enough for that one. And yeah, thank you everyone for the context there. Let's see what's next. Okay, yeah, a few more here. So Anders had a comment that he had, I think there were 3 different EIPs, I guess 2 now. And that's because Mikhail has another one, and this is touching on, a number of different things. So at a high level, we've been thinking quite a bit about consolidations, and I will throw out this sort of main desire or constraint, which is that we want to consolidate the validator set. If you look at adoption so far since Spectra, it is actually, like, if you look at the adoption chart just in itself, it's trending up and right, which is cool. But overall adoption's, pretty low. There's a number of reasons for this, even as simple as like, I think there's not great tooling, and that's something we can, very easily improve very quickly. But then once you start looking into this more deeply, there are a number of things we could think about to make this better, and essentially, in some sense, incentivize consolidations to set us up for things down the line, like single slot finality, or other things that greatly benefit from a smaller validator set. So that all being said, either Mikhail or Anders, if you'd like to speak briefly about your EAPs, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can start. So there's 2 APs that essentially just make it such that, because we want to transition people from the skimming validators to the compounding validators. And so there are 2 EIPs that, because the skimming validators, the original ones, 01s, they actually have benefits over the 02 validators. Both when it comes to the skipping function, which they don't need to pay for the withdrawal, even though it imposes some load on the protocol. So the first one, EIP 8062, just attaches a fee then to the sweep withdrawal accounting, roughly for the load that it imposes. And it's taken out as 0.05% of the withdrawal amount. And the idea then is that that we make it slightly more favorable to go over to the compounding validators and then consolidate the state. And the second issue and the benefit that the skimming validators have is that they have on average around 0.75 ETH of effective balance that is working to their yield that the compounding validators do not. So a skimming validator is very capitally efficient. All of the staked ETH is counting towards the effective balance, whereas a compounding validator only because there's this hysteresis function, and they do not get accounted for the balance until you go up onto the next band, and for this reason you lose out on staking yield because you have let's just say 0.75 ETH less stake counting towards your rewards. And so this EIP 8068 adds a neutral effective balance design, so that the compounding validators have on average the balance counting towards the effective balance in a neutral way. Yeah, there's also another issue with the current effective balance calculation, is that you can withdraw down to, if you have a compounding validator, you can withdraw down to 32.75 ETH, for example, but account for 33 ETH in effective balance. And so you can increase your yield by using your compounding validators, but not consolidating it into a big validator. You just use a small one. We want to avoid that also. So 8068 addresses this issues.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, your audio, the volume seemed to be oscillating a bit. But then, yeah, the playback, at least what I understood from that. So the first EIP 8062, this would basically say that if you're a validator in the automatic sweep with what I think we're still calling partial withdrawals today, it basically adds some like very small percentage fraction of fee. Basically, you just like would burn the extra ETH. And this is a small incentive to move to a consolidating validator so that you don't have this behavior. The second one, I haven't had much time to digest. It sounds like it tweaks how the balances work, and it gives some better properties to consolidation. I don't know if that was a fair summary on yours.
Exactly. The second one, it makes it such that you're essentially doing rounding to the nearest integer when you compute your effective balance.
Okay. And that's better for compounding validators, just given how the compounding actually works.
So right now, they get the effective balance bump from when they only bump up to, for example, if they reach 35.25 ETH, that's when they reach 35. So if they have like 35.1 ETH, they only get 34 ETH of effective balance.
Okay. Gotcha. So, okay, those two. Any questions? Otherwise, just put them on our stack. And if not, then Mikhail, I think you have the next one here. This was, oh yeah, so preventing consolidations as withdrawals. Yeah, there's a little bit of context here around this. Mikhail, do you want to take it over?
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, DCIP prevents consolidations as withdrawals, as Alex said. Today there is the consolidation mechanism designed in a way that if the target validator after consolidation gets the balance that exceeds the max effective balance, that exceed will be withdrawn basically by the sweep. And we see that this, let's call it a feature. This feature has been recently heavily exploited because there is an imbalance between the exit and consolidation queues. So yeah, it requires, of course, 2048 ETH validator, but yeah, that's obviously possible for staking pools. And important to mention that consolidations were never meant to be used this way. Consolidation churn was never meant to be used as the exit churn. And this CIP basically is a fix to this problem. And what it does, it just cancels the consolidation request if the target effective balance will exceed the max effective balance after consolidation. It also takes into account pending consolidations that are in the queue. Yeah, that's what it is.
What's your sense of how important this is to have in Amsterdam? Like, um, it seems like this is a nice to have, but it's not necessarily critical. Or do you think it's, yeah, more important to go ahead and
Yeah,
patch?
yeah, true. Forgot to mention, which is also important. It's not a security issue. It's more kind of UX problem, and it also depends on how long do we want how long we want consolidations to remain as a feature in the protocol. Because when we were introducing consolidations, one of the thoughts was that this is a temporal thing until we see a good consolidation level in the validator set. But as for me personally, it's an open question when we can deprecate consolidations. So yeah, it's really a nice to have feature. It's not super important. There is no security issue with that, but it's also a quite simple change. So yeah, that's kind of it. Trade-offs, and yeah, I think just make a decision to have it or not.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for the overview. So, okay, there's that basket of three things that touches some of the mechanics here around staking and the UX there. So let's see. Okay, I think we're good there. And the next thing would be cell level deltas in PureDOS. Raul wanted to say something here. And the interesting bit
Yes.
here is there's, some changes that aren't necessarily in consensus, but definitely touch on things we want to do to keep scaling blobs, and definitely something to keep in mind as we think about scoping. But yeah, we'll take it from here.
Yeah, so hey everybody. So just to kind of like guide the discussion, I have some materials here. They're very short. I just took the liberty to share them. So just wanted to give, first of all, a TLDR of what pure cell level deltas are. They're a CL side network optimization that eliminates the need to transmit redundant column information and data during the critical path, during the burstiest path of activity in the network. And it does so by leveraging partial blob data that's available in the EL blob pool. If you all remember, there was kind of like a discussion a few months ago around get blobs v3 and that method in the engine API and that method powering the solution. Well, this is basically it. We've been working hard towards it, and I just kind of like wanted to present the status of affairs and next steps here. So what nodes do is they construct columns by exchanging and reconciling cells with one another. And this is implemented as a gossip sub extension. And a gossip sub extension is basically a piece of a functionality that is negotiated between two parties when they establish when they handshake on gossip sub, which is precisely what makes this solution backwards compatible. There is no consensus impact, and it's deployable gradually in the network by different clients, different operators at different points in time, and that's why it can be done ex fork. So yeah, we're kind of like chatting about this in the context of Glamstam, but just kind of like to reiterate what Alex said, this is like the intention is to deploy the solution ex fork. So the motivation for this is that it allows us to unlock the next tranche of BPOs, going from the 21 max that we have right now in the schedule all the way up to 72 blobs max at least. There is a possibility that we can go even further with just this optimization and kind of like some other minor optimizations that we're working with client implementers directly. We predict that the next bottleneck is going to be the EL blob pool, and to kind of like deal with that, we submitted an EIP for Glamsterdam. It was just submitted yesterday. You might have not seen it yet, but it's titled Sparse Blob Pool. So I'll post a set of links in a bit in the chat so that you can start looking at that material as well. So the early results, and these are like massive caveat, these are just from small devnets. They are really promising. They're showing an average reduction of 10x in column traffic during propagation. Remember, during the burstiest part of the slot and the critical path. And this is extrapolating the current rate of public versus unseen blobs in the blob pool, right? So there are some charts there. They look kind of like a little bit Like it doesn't seem like a 10x, but that's because the axes are actually different orders of magnitude. The current status of implementation is that we've got a Prism prototype ready, and it's being reviewed by the team. So thanks a lot, Casey. And another shout out to the Lighthouse team, who's already gotten started with the implementation and the prototype. The gossip subside of things are ready, I think, and Daniel is working on the client side implementation of this. So in terms of BPO schedule, this is what we're thinking. The core notion here is, can we provide a smooth continuation of the current planned BPO scheduled by basically appending the next tranche, which here we're differentiating, calling them BPO plan and BPO next. So this could be a potential BPO schedule, and there are some dates there. I'll talk through them in a second. But basically, the key points here is that so if we continue the schedule, then the next one would be BPO 3, the next work would be BPO 3. That could come around February 26. And it would just be a small parameter bump to ensure that everything looks nominal under with sellable deltas. From there on, the idea would be to increase max further so that we can see how the network is performing, and we can analyze how the network is performing with burstier spikes, but not sustained spikes. And then from there onwards, we would just start doing constant. If everything looks good, we would start doing a constant increment of what you see there is like 32, 48, 48, 64, and 64, 72. Basically on every 2 weeks, there would be a BPO fork here. Now, this is just a very indicative, speculative timeline of how this could progress. So we're currently at the implementation stage. As I said, we are intending to run larger DevNets, and this is we're getting a ton of help from Sunnyside Labs for that. That's currently in progress. The next step would be interoping with Lighthouse, and through that we'll continue iterating on the design and specifically closing some of the open points around early or eager pushes from, for example, relays who know precisely which blobs are private and which have been publicly available. Can those relays just push the delta that is necessary for the network to reconcile? What assumptions can we make about the network-wide availability of blobs in the blob pool, and things like that is what we'll be, I think, polishing and kind of like fine-tuning. And then there are some other technical questions about the schema around, do we include the block headers or not within the partial messages. Now, what I wanted to call out here is by November, we expect to have a final version of the spec that is fully interoperable, that has seen like full interoperability. And at that point, I think the idea would be for the GetBlobs v3 engine API operation to be shipped in all execution clients in preparation for this. And this basically means a rehash of, I think all ELs actually had a PR that they closed down when we descoped this from Fusaka. So that would be rehashing that PR and merging it. And then by November, I would like to see the rest of the implementations, Nimbus, Take1, Lodestar, beginning to implement. And by December, if we can have them all ready, and such that we start getting them in production grade state, and we start battle testing them with larger and larger test nets. I would like to kind of like walk into the winter holidays with a BPO next schedule proposed. That would be amazing. And then when we're back, I would like us to the idea would be to commit to that schedule and to make the releases and to kind of like start the more formal initial releases and start the more formal testnet journey up until mainnet. Some of these dates might shift. As I said, this is very indicative, but like the intention of this is basically to align us all against a common timeline. And I'm very happy to take feedback and input and refine this further based on feasibility and other workloads that client teams are also engaging in. Cool. So basically, what's next? The next steps, as I said, we're running larger test nets and conducting battle testing, conducting interrupt tests as Lighthouse also gets ready against the Prism prototype. And then the asks for implementers here would be for the CL implementers. Please, if you haven't engaged with this work yet, then please review, comment on the specs, and start planning implementation. I'll share these materials after the call today, so you can use them as a reference. And then for EL implementers, as I said, this is minimal impact to the EL, practically zero impact if it wasn't for GetBlobs v3. So, and for which most of ELs already have a PR. So get ready to rehash that PR essentially. And yeah, so I'm very happy to take questions or thoughts, ideas, anything. Also happy to discuss upend. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, that was a great overview. And yeah, I think I just remind everyone that the general theme of Amsterdam and essentially, the present time and the foreseeable future is scaling. That might have been a lot from the presentation that we just saw from Earl, but again, it all goes towards scaling. So critical work and something to keep in mind, especially if you look at the other PFI EIPs and you're like, oh, there's not this much, these are like one line changes. We'll just put this here and here. Keep in mind, we very much also want to keep doing the work Raoul is just pointing to. So that's, I think, going to have impacts for the other EIPs we select for Amsterdam. Any questions from what Raoul said? Okay. One thing we can do offline, Raoul, is just get that information you just shared just somewhere, I think public. It might be in some place, but yeah, we'll just get it somewhere just so people can refer to it.
Yep, I'll follow up on that.
And otherwise, cool. Yeah, that was great. Thanks for the overview. Okay. Now there's one question here. Maybe two. Okay, so like clients asking, do CEOs feel good about another 3 BPOs while finishing Amsterdam? My general comment to this is kind of what I was just getting at, is that, I think we can scope Amsterdam in a way where this is definitely doable. If we aren't thinking about these non-consensus changes on the networking layer and just put in every last, CL, EIP into Amsterdam, that's where things could start to be a little tight. But yeah, I think there's certainly a path here. So that's something we should just reason about as we go to scope. I don't know if any other CL team wants to chime in to like Clint's question. Okay. Enrico here's asking, well, partial message extension. Okay, it looks like you guys are handling that in the chat. Yeah, just chime in if you'd want to speak up live. And there's still a conversation going around the staking stuff. I'll just let that be for now. Okay. Matt says, I'd like to hear from the actual CL teams. Anyone want to chime in? I think folks might need some time to digest. So, let's just take this to the next call. Okay, we did get I think we'll be fine from Kingi. Okay, so yeah, again, I think today, I just want to surface, all the options with the different EIPs and get us thinking about scoping. So the idea then is that we have another 2 weeks to actually form opinions so we can hash it out on next ACDC. So I think we're good for there for now. And let me see what's next on the agenda. Okay, so the last one here is Fossil, which is a little bit special than the others, which is why I kind of put it last here. So yeah, EIP 7805. This one was CFI'd essentially because it was not selected as a headliner for Amsterdam. But yeah, the decision made at the time was to CFI it and just kind of put it to the side. So this is another one that we can have on the table as we go to scope the fork. And we've said quite a bit about it already. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there are any authors here on the call.
Yeah.
If anyone would like to say something. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be short because I do think a lot of things have been said around fossil, and things haven't like drastically changed, I guess, and it still seems like most people, like amongst the community, but also core devs and researchers, like agree about the importance of like shipping fossil at some point, because it does basically allow to keep scaling without like hurting some of the fundamental properties we really care about. But yeah, most of the disagreements, I guess, seem to be focused around when fossil should be shipped. And so, there are concerns around fault scope and Ethereum upgrades needing to ship on a regular cadence, which I think is so important. People call that fork discipline, I guess. And so there, like, given the readiness of fossil, that's now, having interrupt between 2 EL clients and 4 CL clients. I don't know, there seems to be rough agreement around fossil, maybe realistically adding like a 2-month delay to Amsterdam timelines, but of course it's very, very hard to tell in advance. And that being said, yeah, I think one aspect of the decision that wasn't really mentioned explicitly before is quote unquote the shipping environment. And so what by that I mean, like, I don't know, governance, political landscape, institutional adoption, like state ETFs and stuff like this, and how it might affect like proposals like fossil, but also, privacy ones or issuance CIPs that are also like sort of like touched by these considerations, in opposition to like, I don't know, like scaling EIPs or shorter slots or whatever that are not just like super affected by it, I guess. And yeah, here I think the equation is like actually quite simple. It's like either you think there is both a very, very high probability of fossil shipping in a later fork. That's all assuming you like fossil and you want it shipped at some point. So yeah, either you think high probability of fossil shipping in a later fork and a very high probability of the shipping environment, let's say, staying as friendly as it is today. By friendly, I mean, yeah, it includes like strong support from the community, and there is momentum behind it. You see even like builders being pro-fossil. There is actually not much censorship on the network right now. And there is a sort of like friendly political landscape that looks generally favorable to these upgrades. And in that case, like if you think that both of those probabilities are very high, I think like, yeah, you might just favor like shipping cadence and process and decide against including fossil in Amsterdam. But the alternative, I guess, is like if you think shipping fossil will only be increasingly difficult over time, and basically the more we wait, the more we expose the protocol to, censorship or like bad things we don't want to see on the network, and maybe like pressure from parties that will see risks in allowing EIPs like fossil to be included in future forks, then I think you might lean in favor of including it just like as soon as possible, which means in Amsterdam. And so I think, yeah, regardless of what side people end up on, I think it's nice to at least include this dimension when forming an opinion for fossil inclusion, because I do think it's an important decision to make for Ethereum. And yeah, I wanted to end with a small anecdote. I was checking out the new website that's called institutions.ethereum.org yesterday. And there, Ethereum was described as like a network with no single point of failure, no central coordinator, no pause button, and resilient to geopolitical, regulatory, and infrastructure level risks. And I think, yeah, I thought it was quite well put, but I guess my personal opinion is that I think we need to back those claims up a bit more.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was a nice overview. And yeah, I mean, I think just to maybe summarize that a bit, I think Ansgar put it well here in the chat that, yeah, there's, kind of this trade-off to make between, on the one hand, like Spoke was saying, we want to, not add too much uncertainty to Cloudstream timelines. At the same time, there are interesting second order implications to this EIP and EIPs like it. So something to think about. I think that's perhaps enough on that for the moment. Would anyone like to add anything? Okay. So let's see. I think these were all the CL non-headliner PFI DIPs that we had, or yeah, at least non-headliner EIPs regardless of inclusion status. And that should give us a good overview. Again, thank you everyone who just engaged and gave us, overviews of the different EIPs. There's, it does feel like there's actually quite a bit here once we get into it. Even if, on paper, it's just a small number of EIPs. The EL side of this will be fun as a tangential comment. But either way, yeah, so that should be a good overview. And there's a few more things I wanted to get to today. So, okay, one clarification, because yeah, AP Kotap brought this up. So I'll grab a link to this comment here where it's proposing we have written opinions 2 weeks from now. And I said we would move these things to SFI. I should be more precise because, yeah, how we generally do this is that we would CFI things and then kind of have this lockstep process where the things that are on DevNets right now are SFI'd, everything else would be CFI'd, and only once we're ready to add another EIP to the DevNet would we move from CFI to SFI. And we've kind of added this discipline, let's say, over the last couple cycles. And it's really helpful just to keep, things kind of focused and organized. Otherwise, we'll kind of just end up biting off more than we can chew, which we don't want to do. So what that would mean then precisely is that on the next call, we will come back to the scoping discussion and try to make decisions on what to CFI. Just so it's clear, if we decide to not include fossil, then we would take it out of the CFI set for now. But then the plan then would be to have the CFI set determined on the next ACDC, again, at least on the CL side. And then we'd keep EPBS SFI'd as is and keep moving forward. And then from there, we'd have the Cloudstream scope settled. We'd keep moving forward. As we get through things on DevNets, we'd start with the SFI'd EIPs on DevNets, and then, yeah, start moving EIPs one by one as we're ready for those. So, yeah, thanks for the shout out there, AB Kota. And that should be good there. I think that's all I wanted to say on that. There's a few HStar things to cover before we wrap up, but before we do that, any other Glamsterdam comments? Anything around scoping or the EIPs or anything else? Okay. Then we'll turn to HStar. The main thing for HStar is just to pick the name. And yeah, let's look at that now. So there's this informal poll here that, if anything, is great for signaling. Let's see if I can grab a link. There we go, to just the poll. So if you take a look at this here, there's a number of proposals. These should all be stars that start with H, which is our schema. And the leading proposal right now, it's kind of a toss-up between Heka or Helvetios. Heka is the leading candidate. And yeah, I think we should just go ahead and pick one. And following the poll, let's just go with Heka. Everyone okay with that? Okay, that works for me. AB ClickUp was nice to put some possible portmanteaus here, so we have the CL and EL names. On the EL, this is the Bogota fork that we would be discussing. So Heka and Bogota could perhaps be Hekta. Bogota. I don't know. There's some options here that we can see what sticks. But in terms of today, we move forward with Heka, and that would be H star, and we can finally have a name and stop calling it H star. Lowell's comment here is funny. Heka, yes. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and do Heka. And yeah, we'll just see people will come in with portmanteaus, and one of them will invariably stick, and we'll go with that. Cool. So, okay, we've covered a lot today. Let me just scan the agenda and make sure there's nothing else we need to get to. H star name. Okay. I think we're pretty good there. Oh, okay. There was a call for a mascot. Did we ever have a mascot for Amsterdam? If not, we can discuss this on Discord or somewhere. But yeah, there's a link if you want to take a look there. I'm not sure what it is, but it's something to think about if you want to put in a proposal for the mascot. Okay. Otherwise, I think that's it for today. Any closing thoughts or comments? Okay, if not, thank you all. Yeah, so let's just quickly summarize. We have mainnet for Fusaka locked in. That's big. Again, congrats everyone beating this point, and let's see it through to the end. We covered a bunch of things on Amsterdam. So yeah, again, your homework here is to think about scoping, including all the PFI DIPs, thinking about also this work with PureDOS and blob scaling iterations that we would also want to schedule, even if they're, X fork in the sense of not waiting till Amsterdam, but we still want to have bandwidth for them. Then also cross-layer IPs, which I think Fossil is really the only cross-layer one, but then, we'll probably want to be mindful of the EL side when thinking about that in terms of scoping. And yeah, then we'll move ahead with Heka as the name for H star. Okay. That should be it for the day. And yeah, thanks everyone. I'll see you next time.